One of the really interesting and important trends in global politics is that more and more people are calling for different models of democracy. There's a feeling, quite a widespread feeling, that if democracy is to prosper in the future, it needs to be made more varied, more tailored to different local circumstances in different regions of the world, more accountable, more participative. So many activists, politicians, diplomats today call for non-Western models of democracy. The sentiment behind that is justified, it's very desirable. There's a big question over actually what this means in practice. So the book explores whether there is such a thing as a non-Western model of democracy and what the international community can do in a practical sense to try and foster more varied forms of democratic practice across the world. Many people frame this debate as a debate between a Western liberal form of democracy and non-Western forms of democracy. Many people argue that Western forms of democracy have failed in many places of the world, and that these regions need to develop forms of democracy that are very specific to their own regions. My book argues that the debate is a bit more complicated than this. We need to do more to foment variations in democracy, but it's actually very difficult to define with any precision a single non-Western form of democracy. People around the world feel that they want something different from Western democracy, but it's often difficult to define what that is or to determine whether those local identities and local practices require a wholesale different model of democracy. My argument is that the notion of non-Western democracy is problematic in many senses, but that shouldn't deviate us from supporting really significant non-Western innovations in democracy where these are succeeding around the world. The question of non-Western democracy has been debated for many years. The debate tends to take place at quite a high level of abstraction. But this is not just an academic or an analytical debate, it's relevant to real-life policy decisions. So the international community, international organizations, Western powers now say they fully support the idea of backing different variations, different varieties of democracy around the world. And they've begun to move in that direction. So in African countries, in Afghanistan, in the Middle East, they're doing more to support local forms of civic organizations that may not look like exact Western replicas. They're trying to do more genuinely to listen to local voices, to understand what people really want that's different from Western democracy. But most international organizations and Western powers are still relatively cautious, and they could be doing a lot more to try and support good, healthy, benign forms of Western non-Western variation in democracy around the world.